Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to episode 10 of the Book Blab. My name is Amy, and I'm here with Suzanne, and we're here to discuss books and have fun together. I never know what to say in these introductions, but I do have two things actually to talk about, just kind of housekeeping items before we get started. One is that I don't know if you realized this, Suzanne, but this month actually marks our 1-year anniversary of the Book Blab.
I did realize it, except that we are only on episode 10, which means
I know. I did realize that too.
Oh, yeah.
Wow. So we've been averaging.
But happy anniversary. That's
fun. Yeah. So we've been doing this for a year, and it's been so much fun. And so the other thing that I wanted to mention is, so when we started, we were using a video platform called Blab. And that's where our name even came from. That's why we called this show the Book Blab, was because of the platform we were using. But as we've talked about before, Blab is no more. And so we've switched platforms. And I don't know if you've noticed this, Suzanne, but the videos that we had, the Blab videos that we put onto our blog are no longer working. So if you go back to past episodes, it just says, time to say goodbye. And when I saw that first, I freaked out a little bit because I was like, those videos were so good. And it had so much like fun information in them. So I was like, oh, I hope they're not actually really gone. So last night, I actually had Mike go back through, and so I could go back into my email and find the videos and get to him that way. So he transferred them all over to YouTube. So now they're on my YouTube channel, and I can share the links with you so that you can update your website. But for anyone who's watching, and I will put this in the show notes, but if you go to my YouTube channel, you'll be able to see all of the past episodes that we've recorded. And so they're not lost. So that's great. So
as long as YouTube doesn't disappear on us.
Exactly. But it has a better history than Blab.
Right.
Blab was fairly new. So hopefully not. Okay. But so in that very first episode that we did a year ago, it was more of an introduction episode, but at the end we did our book recommendation segment, and the books that we chose to recommend were books that were based on food. And that was such a fun recommendation segment. So in honor of Thanksgiving this month, and because we both love reading books about food, we've decided to turn this topic into a whole episode. So we get to just talk about food books to our heart's content today.
And I thought when I suggested this topic, I thought it was kind of a narrow topic, but actually it's not. There's so much to talk about with books and food. So I'm excited.
Yes, I know. We've got a whole range of topics, from just basic cookbooks to memoirs to nonfiction to books that just really feature food, and food is kind of a very, memorable part of the book. So we're going to dive right in. And Suzanne, do you have any favorite cookbooks? We're going to start with the actual cookbook.
Books about food. Right. So I'm actually not the right person to talk to about cookbooks, because I have, in the past few years, thrown out all my cookbooks because I wasn't using them, because I've been transitioning to just completely digital platforms when it comes to recipes and recipe curation. And I follow food blogs and all of that. So I found myself not using any cookbooks and threw all of my hard copies away. But I will say that I feel guilty about this, because I know that there are great cookbooks out there, and I know that there are great cooks out there who just love their cookbooks and, have written really great cookbooks, and that there are people out there who read cookbooks for fun. And I kind of wish I was one of those people, but I'm just not. So anyway, I will pass that question back to you, Amy. What are your favorite cookbooks?
Okay, so I'm actually the same as you, and I also have gotten rid of most of my cookbooks. I think the only ones that I really still have left are like a binder that I've kind of created myself, and like family cookbooks. Yes, pretty much it. Although I have to say, I do love looking through cookbooks. I think they're just always so pretty. But as far as owning them myself or having a go-to cookbook, I don't have one of those. I am much more of an online person, and I have my online, I have my blogs, my cooking blogs that I trust more.
Maybe we'll have to do a whole episode on like the food blogs that we follow. Because the writing on there is good. Like,
the writing is amazing. Actually.
Yeah, it's good food writing and good recipes. Anyway, so it's interesting.
So, but what I do love and what we were going to talk about next are the food memoirs, which still have recipes in them, but have stories that go along with the recipes. And so I have to say, okay, back in our episode last November that we did, the book that I recommended during that food segment was Garlic and Sapphires by Ruth Reichel, which I still love. Later, though, I can't remember if it was after that or before it, but I checked out her newest book, which was called My Kitchen Year, I think. Yeah, My Kitchen Year. Yeah. And it was actually, so I liked it, but it was too much of a cookbook for me, if that makes sense. So it has like over 100 recipes in it, whereas Garlic and Sapphires, I want to say maybe has like 20 or 25. And it was just like, you never had time to get into like her life and story before there was another recipe being shared. So it felt much more like I was actually reading a cookbook than a memoir. And I ended up not even finishing it because it wasn't as much fun to read as Garlic and Sapphires. So I think I definitely like it to be, I think it has to have the right balance for me to like it. And that one was a little bit too heavy on the recipes to really feel like I was reading a book. But I have some more that I want to mention. But first, what are your favorite cooking memoirs?
I think, the one I recommended last year too is still probably my top favorite, which is Bread and Wine by Shauna Niequist, which is, it's got like one recipe at the end of every chapter.
Yeah.
So there's
and that's 15, how a lot of them
recipes
are.
And most of it is her writing reflections on life and feeding her family and hosting people. And anyway, and so, and I really like her writing style, which I think is great. But what I realized in reflecting about this genre of like memoir / cookbooks is that in my head, I really like them, but I haven't actually read that many of them. I realized when I was going through Goodreads to look them up, and they were all on my to-read list and not on my read list. And I was like,
that's going to happen for me really soon when we start talking about the nonfiction food books, because yes, most of them are on my to-read list and not.
So Garlic and Sapphires has been on my to-read list forever. Delancey by Molly Weisenberg. Have you read that one?
No, but I've read her My Homemade Life, which is very good.
And I don't know if it has recipes in it, but it is memoir.
I think it does.
Yeah, memoir.
Well, My Homemade Life does, and I feel like Delancey was supposed to be kind of a sequel to that. So, it's a memoir. It's a true story, but...
right, and I've heard great things about all of her writings. So she's been on my to-read list forever. Dinner, A Love Story.
Okay, I'm going to talk about that one.
Okay, you can talk about that one. That one's been on my to-read list forever. Yeah, there's just a bunch that... anyway, so maybe I'd need to dive into this genre a little bit more, get them off my to-read list. So tell us what else you want to talk about in this genre. Yeah,
so, well, first of all, I have to say that Bread and Wine, this is like my one regret of 2016 that I've not read it yet, because it had been on my list even, before you mentioned it last year. And I even went and had my library purchase it, which they did. And then it was up on a Kindle deal. So I bought it then. So it's been on my Kindle. And I've kind of been saving it for this month. And now this month has come and I am so swamped with other books that I don't even know if I'm going to get to it. And it just is like making me so irritated, because that was the one food memoir that I really wanted to read this year. So we'll see. I'm still crossing my fingers. Maybe Thanksgiving weekend we'll have a lot of reading time in it and I'll just get to read it then. But
maybe.
Yeah. Anyway, though, so the one I specifically wanted to mention this time in this category was Dinner, A Love Story, which you mentioned, by Jenny Rosenstrack. And so for those who don't know, this book is kind of, so she's a mom, and clear back in, I think like 1998, she started recording what they were eating for dinner every night. So it was kind of just like a one-line journal type of thing, but with food. And she just found, like, as she did this, she started noticing trends in their family and in the way that they were eating. And, you know, it helped her not forget recipes that sometimes, you know, you'll make for like weeks and weeks and weeks. And then all of a sudden you'll go for months and you're like, wait, what about that chili recipe? We used to eat that all the time. And you just forget it for whatever reason. So I loved that book because I felt like it was very practical. The recipes were really easy to make, or, you know, easy to, they didn't have any weird ingredients and things like that. So I actually tried several of them, and two of them we're still making now, and it's like 2 years after I read the book. So like her black bean burritos, those are super delicious. And she does like this pasta with caramelized onions and spinach, which sounds kind of weird, but it's really good.
But also delicious. So
yes, and I kind of feel like she's the reason why I actually like onions now, because I never liked them before. But so in the black bean burritos, she quick pickles them, which I'd never done before, and it makes them so delicious. I had no idea onions could taste like that. And then the pasta has these caramelized onions, and both of them, oh, they're so good. So
I definitely need to check this one out.
Yeah, it's great. And I think it's just really practical too, because she's cooking with kids, at least in this in that book, her kids are still young when she's telling a lot of the stories. And so she totally knows what it's like to have that crazy dinner hour and stuff. So it's good. And she just had a new book come out like 2 months ago. It's called How to Celebrate Everything. And I'm really excited about that one.
Oh, I've heard of that one. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds really good. So, yeah. And can I mention, I was just going to mention one memoir besides Bread and Wine that I really want to read. Maybe you've heard about it. It's called Make the Bread, Buy the Butter. Have you heard of that one?
I have heard of it. Yeah.
Have you read it?
I haven't. It might be on my to-read list somewhere.
Yeah. So anyway, that's one that is on my to-read list that I'd like to read, but definitely after Bread and Wine.
So. In this category, one more memoir. It is a food memoir, but it doesn't necessarily have recipes in it. Was Julia Child's My Life in France.
Yep, I've read it too.
Yeah, and I loved it. It was fascinating, and I loved it. And it doesn't have official recipes in it, but I just have to say this, that I learned how to make scrambled eggs from that book, from her description of like the cooking process and how the scrambled eggs were supposed to look. And I was like, oh, I don't think I've ever had scrambled eggs like that. So then I tried doing it like she had described in the book, and it was amazing. It was so awesome. They were so good. And I was like, oh, Julia Child, now I don't think I can get into her cookbook. I don't think I can handle that right now at this point in my life, but maybe someday.
I know. I found her kind of intimidating, but yes.
Totally intimidating.
She definitely is describing the process in her memoir of like making certain things. So yeah, I love that. I actually looked up some of her videos after I was done with that book, and they were so entertaining. So if you haven't watched any of her cooking videos, they're pretty fun.
Do that sometime.
Yeah. So, okay. Now that we've covered the food memoir genre, we're going to move on to just strictly, nonfiction books about food. So these are more like nutrition books or healthy eating kinds of things, not necessarily how food takes a part in someone's life.
Right. So the two big-ish nutrition books that nonfiction-wise that I've read, In Defense of Food by Michael Pollan.
Yes, love that one.
And I haven't read any of his other stuff, although I hear like The Omnivore's Dilemma is maybe better.
Okay, so I've read both of those. I've read In
Okay,
Defense of Food and The Omnivore's Dilemma. And I
your
would
opinion,
actually
maybe?
say In Defense of Food. I liked better. So
Okay.
The Omnivore's Dilemma was really good,
Mm-hmm.
but it felt much more, it wasn't as relatable. In Defense of Food was like, oh, okay, I could like do that. I could change my habits in that way.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
The Omnivore's Dilemma was like, whoa, okay, this is a little
much
extreme.
Yeah, I went into In Defense of Food very skeptical. I was like, I don't think that a journalist is gonna anyway. But it did. It actually changed the way I cook and think about food in a pretty profound way. And so, so that says something about a book when it can do that.
Yep.
And then the one I read just in September is How Not to Die by Michael Greger. And if you read my blog at all in September, there was like 3 posts on it. Anyway, so lots to think about in that one. And I agree and disagree with him. I mostly agree with him and highly recommend it because it is very, very science-based. It's hard to argue with some of his conclusions because he is very, I mean, he's a doctor and he's like very, very, very into the research. So I appreciated that. But one I want to mention that's not like a nutrition book. This is once again on my to-read list, but it's called Near 1,000 Tables, A History of Food by Felipe Fernandez Arnesto. And this one sounds so fascinating to me, and I'm excited to pick it up sometime because it's like the entire history of food and like how humans started cooking and then how we started, I mean, like just, I guess there's like 8 revolutions in food or something like that he discusses that like have completely changed the human diet. Anyway, I find that kind of thing fascinating, so I'm excited to pick that one up sometime. That
one sounds good.
Yeah, what about you?
Okay, so, well, besides Michael Pollan, who that's mainly who I've read, there are a few others that are on my to-read list that I was just going to mention here in case you've heard of them or know anything about them. So one is called Disease Proof Your Child. Have you heard of that one?
I haven't heard this one.
Okay. I don't know too much about it, but it sounds really interesting and I love that.
On the to-read list. Okay.
And then there's one called Real Moms Love to Eat. So I think partly, I can't even remember where I first heard about it, but just like reading the synopsis, I'm like, okay, this is a book I could get behind because I'm a mom and I do love to eat, and just showing like why moms want to, and also why it's healthy and why it's okay, and how to like eat in a way that's going to make you feel good and not horrible and not sick.
So funny that moms like mom eating is a separate category from like human eating, but it's true.
I do believe it is though.
It is
because
your food habits change so much once you're in charge of cooking for like everyone else.
And just like being, if you are a stay-at-home mom and you're staying home during the day,
and food's all around you.
Food's all around you, and your kids are eating, but it's kind of
you're constantly making their food.
So you kind of eat at another time so that you don't have to eat with them. And then, when things get kind of quiet in the afternoon, you just want to eat a snack. I don't know why. So that one sounds really good.
It's really funny.
And then there's one called Salt, Sugar, and Fat that's been on everyone's list.
I've heard about that one.
Yeah. And that one sounds good, but I'm also worried that it will make me realize that I have horrible eating habits and should go to a strictly organic and plant-based diet or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I know. How Not to Die. That's it.
Yeah. Yep.
I forgot to mention French Kids Eat Everything.
Oh, yeah.
That one's an interesting line between like memoir and nonfiction fact stuff. Anyway, because she talks about her own life in France, but then talks about just like French culture and how they feed their kids. And that's a good guilt trip one for I read that one when my youngest was a baby and not yet on solid foods. And I was like, oh yeah, my kid's going to totally eat everything. And here we are 2 kids later, 2 super picky kids later, not eating everything, not eating like French kids. Anyway, so yeah, one to read if you want a guilt trip for your picky eater.
So I haven't read that one, but I've read Bringing Up Baby.
And she talks a little bit about that too.
Same thing. Yeah. She's living in France, and I mean, it's not the whole focus of the book, but there's definitely a whole chapter on the French culture and how they feed their kids. So, yeah. So, yes, anything else with nonfiction food books that you wanted to mention?
I mean, there are a lot of nonfiction, but we got to move on. We got to move on to fiction. So like just fiction writing about food.
Or not even about food, but just food that comes into play within the course of the story.
Exactly,
yeah.
Exactly. Uh-huh.
Yep.
I love good writing about food. And that, so that comes in fiction on food. So, so one of my favorites, I think, one that I have read by Ruth, how do you say her last name?
Reichel.
Okay, is Delicious. I haven't read her nonfiction, but I have read her fiction. Mm-hmm. And the food writing in that book, I was just like, oh my gosh.
That's how she writes about food. It's like you're eating it.
I know. And it was good. And it's a fun story too. It's a fun, engaging plot, but yeah, it's the food, right? She's a food writer. So what about you? Favorite fiction?
So my favorite fictional story that has a lot of food in it is Farmer Boy by Laura Ingalls Wilder. Hands down. That book, I mean, it's not about the food, but that Wilder family eats so well. And during the whole book, and you're just wondering, like, how can they not be 300 pounds? Because they are eating donuts and pies and just like really rich, heavy food for a lot of the book. Like anytime.
When I read about those pioneer diets, I'm like, did those mothers do anything but cook? They didn't.
Oh, no, I don't think they did. Like, and I think you get a feel for that in Farmer Boy. Like his mom is always in the kitchen. And he's always kind of coming in, and he'll grab a donut out of the crockery, and then he'll go play again. And it's just funny. But those food descriptions are they just
mouth-watering.
So good. When I read it to my kids last year, I can remember just Aaron, my oldest, he would just moan on the ground. I'm so hungry right now.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah,
that's a fun book that has food just, woven throughout the story. It's just, that's my favorite. But do you have a favorite besides Delicious where food comes into play?
Books that are favorites that have foods in them that like I've always wanted to try or like super interested in because they're in my favorite books. I actually have tried Turkish Delight.
You have?
Because of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Yeah, it's not good. It's it's like really it's really nasty, actually.
Wow.
So I don't know, but like Turkish Delight is.
Yeah, I guess
everyone knows what Turkish Delight is because of The Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe. Yeah,
got tempted into the Queen's sleigh if it was so
nasty. I actually read something about how C.S. Lewis was obviously writing about like wartime children when sugar rations and so things so his idea, like children of the day, their idea of what sweets were and what
interesting,
very different than what our idea of it is today.
That's funny.
So Turkish Delight, and then of course, like anyone who's read and loved the Harry Potter series, there is the candy. Like it is so creative. It is so fun, and I know that they have Bertie Bott's knockoff jelly beans out there, that are fun. But I don't know. It's not the same as like what she describes in the book, and I love her descriptions of the candy in the book and the butterbeer and all of that. It's really fun.
Yes, and the feasts. I mean, anytime there's a feast, they talk about the food, and it always sounds so good.
I know. So the food in that one's a lot of fun. And then I also love all of the food in the Anne of Green Gables series.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she's in the kitchen a lot too, messing up her cakes or her pies or whatever.
Right.
And it's fun. But raspberry cordial, I had never tried it, but I've always wanted to.
I know. It always sounds so good.
I know, doesn't it? Because of Anne, raspberry cordial. So what about you? Any other?
Yeah. So I was trying to go through, and it's kind of hard to remember. Sometimes, when you're reading it, you think, oh, that sounds so good, but it's not actually something that sticks with you. But I was actually thinking, I was thinking of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory by Roald Dahl.
Oh, yeah.
But then I realized I was thinking about other Roald Dahl books, and I was like, actually, food plays a huge part in almost all of the books that I've read by him, whether it's good food or nasty food. Yeah. So, because, you think about the BFG and like the Snozcumber and the whatever, I can't remember what the drink is called, but that and like Fantastic Mr. Fox, the whole thing is like getting into their pantries and like messing things up, and because the foxes want to eat. So anyway, I was like, Roald Dahl, I don't think people would normally consider him a food writer, but
definitely
food definitely plays a part.
Factory and all of that candy I want. All of
that. Yes, I know, it sounds so good.
So fun. Yeah, he is a good one.
Yeah. Okay, so now it's time for or did you have anything else you wanted to say about fiction books?
No, let's go ahead and
okay. So for our book recommendation segment, we're gonna leave food for a little bit. I think we've probably exhausted this subject enough for today.
I know, and how many books have we mentioned already?
I know. So don't worry, we're gonna have these all in the show notes if any of these sound interesting to anyone watching. But yeah, so we thought we would leave food books for our book recommendation segment and instead just talk about cozy November reads, a book that will just like make you feel, that you'll just want to curl up with during these months or during this month as it starts to get colder and, well, maybe not for you, but
not for me, colder in that I have not had to turn the AC on yet today. We're cooling down.
Great. Okay. That's good. So, Suzanne, what are you going to recommend for this topic?
Yeah, Amy and I, we're both really into seasonal reading. We love the idea of seasonal reading. So yes, I like reading books about cold weather when there's cold weather outside. And I don't actually have cold weather outside, but it's nice to dream. Right. So the book I'm recommending right now or today is Peace Like a River by Leif Anger, I think, right? And this one, I don't actually remember the timeline in the book, but I believe it starts in the fall and goes through winter. There are snow scenes, there's cold scenes, there's lots, thinking back on the book, I feel cold.
Yeah. Is that because the book was actually, because the subject is a little bit dark also, or not maybe dark.
Yeah, dark's not the right. Dark's not the right. It's heavy. The subject's heavy, which I actually feel like is fitting too because I don't know, there's that you have your light beach reads, and then in the fall and winter, I personally feel like I need to read something a little bit more serious.
Yes,
this is the time for contemplating and reflection, and so anyway, Peace Like a River totally fits into that. If you want a book to make you contemplate and reflect, and it's a slower paced book. Definitely, but really, it's really good. I think it's worth plowing through. And yes, there's cold scenes, there's snow scenes, and I want to curl up with this one.
Yes.
So, Amy, what are you recommending?
Okay, so I feel like all my recommendations always come with a lot of explanations with them. But okay, so when we first decided on the cozy fall subject, I was like, oh yeah, that will be easy. And the author that immediately came to my mind was Louisa May Alcott. But I was like, I can't mention her because I think I've mentioned her almost every episode. But for some
reason,
she's so great for fall. And actually, I'm reading a book by her right now, Eight Cousins, and it's great, and it does fit the season perfectly. And then my next thought was actually Charles Dickens, who I think is another great fall reader.
Ooh, definitely.
But I didn't go with him either because I was like, well, that everyone knows about Charles Dickens, and everyone knows that he's a good fall author. So I can't mention that one.
I don't know that that's true.
Oh, you don't think?
I never thought of him as like a, but anyway, it totally fits. No, it totally fits.
Maybe I should have done that one, but I didn't. So then I kind of got hung up on the word cozy because like some of the books that I think are great for fall, I was like, it's not very cozy though, because it is like a heavier book, a heavier topic. I'm like, I kind of feel like depressed when I read it instead of like, oh, I feel so happy and like this is such a good book or whatever. So that knocked out a bunch of other books.
You are like thinking way too into this.
I know. Okay. So anyway, what I went with, I have to tell one more funny story. So one of the other authors I thought of one of the other books was A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. But do you remember in the spring, we recommended great spring reads, and both of them recommended Betty Smith. So I was like,
oh, I love that.
Interesting that like I thought of her in the spring, and now I'm thinking.
Well, some authors are just good for all seasons, right?
It's true. Like, depending on how you look at it, the book could go either way. Okay. Anyway, though, I'm gonna get to my actual book. So as I was thinking about this, trying to find a cozy book, I was like, okay, I'm not a huge fantasy reader, but actually in the fall, I feel like fairy tale retellings are really great in the fall for some reason.
Yeah,
they don't necessarily feel like summer reads to me. I mean, some of them are lighter.
Well, some of them are darker and have exactly.
So I went with the fairy tale. I went with I
love that you are recommending a fairy tale.
I know. This is unusual for me. So this might be the only time I ever do it, unless we have to recommend favorite fairy tales or something. But so the one I'm recommending is Sun and Moon, Ice and Snow by Jessica Day George. Have you read this one?
No, but it is on my to-read list.
Okay.
So I'm going to have to read it.
Yes. It would be a great book for November, December, January. I think I read it in January, actually, and it was really good for then. But it would be fine now, too. But it's a retelling of the Nordic legend, East of the Sun, West of the Moon, which talks about this girl's journey, like, on this white polar bear, and they go to an enchanted castle, and she basically has to break the spell there, and then they have to flee these awful trolls. So it's pretty exciting. And I've actually, this is also crazy because I don't read a ton of fairy tales or fantasy, but I've actually read 3 retellings of this particular legend.
Really?
Yes. I don't know why. It wasn't on purpose. I would just like start one. I'm like, oh, here's another one that's about this. But out of the 3 that I've read, this is my favorite. So the pacing is just really good. And it is a book that will make you want to curl up with a blanket. I promise. So as far as cozy,
exciting.
I can guarantee that it's cozy.
I'm going to have to read this one. All right.
Yeah.
Sounds good. All right. Well, oh goodness, that was another super fun episode.
It was.
I love this show so much. I'm so glad we're doing it for another year at least, right?
Yes, exactly.
All right. So thanks, Amy, for chatting with me today about food books, and we'll be back again hopefully next month.
Yes, we will try really hard.
we will, with another great show on some bookish topic. So yeah, we'll be announcing that at some future point. But anyway, thanks for joining us.
Thanks. We'll see you later.